In the meantime, we're getting reports of who might replace Veterans Affairs Secretary Eric Shinseki. Dr. Toby Cosgrove, who runs the Cleveland Clinic, is apparently being considered for the top job, according to the Wall Street Journal and other news sources. Cosgrove served as a surgeon in Vietnam. He was awarded the Bronze Star. In the meantime, our next guest is threatening legal action against the VA if it doesn't comply with a subpoena issued by Congress. Joining us, Republican Congressman Jeff Miller of Alabama, chairman of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, and who has been on the forefront of this issue. Congressman Miller, what does the VA have that you want that you're not getting?
The problem is we don't know what they have. What we know is that the General Counsel said at our hearing last week that they had finished providing us all of the information that we had requested, and subsequent to that letter, I asked the question in the hearing from a gentleman that was there and asked him did he take notes in the meeting whereby the list was talked about being destroyed. He said yes, yet we copies of those notes. So what we're going to do is, if they don't provide everything by Monday, when Congress goes back into session in the House, then we're going to go ahead and petition the federal court to make the Department of Veterans Affairs comply with the subpoena.
Why do you think you need that information so badly?
Because they haven't been telling the truth all along. I mean, there was a list, there was a secret list. It was destroyed. We want to know who destroyed it, what names were on the list, who authorized the destruction, and probably one of the important questions is, when was that list destroyed? Because at the very same hearing that broke this all open on April the 9th, I asked for a preservation order that basically said you will destroy nothing. And now it appears that they were destroying records in an attempt to get around the preservation order that Congress had ordered.
Well, while this is playing out, and we're going to stay close on this story and see what happens, Congressman Miller, I'd like to ask you about what's really happening on the ground for veterans, how their reality has changed or not in this country after we've discussed this story for so many weeks. It's my understanding that the Senate has introduced 2 pieces of legislation to change the way that veterans can get health care if they're in these long wait times. But the House has yet to really introduce any legislation. You haven't as well. You've talked about it, but you haven't introduced legislation. Why not?
Well, number one, you can't introduce legislation unless, in fact, you are in session. But the thing that I don't want people to lose
So are the veterans out of luck then if the Congress isn't in session and there's, bureaucratic things that have to be done? Do they just have to wait?
No, Jenna, Jenna, if you wouldn't have interrupted me, I would have finished the story. They already have the authority to allow veterans to go outside of the VA system. They don't need Congress to tell them you have to do it. They already have the authority to go to military facilities, to contract facilities, or to go out onto private care.
You're saying
so
the
don't
VA?
Try and say because, yes, VA has had it for decades, and that's what's so egregious about this, Jenna.
Right, absolutely. And I think we're all outraged on it. But what's interesting, Congressman, is that outraged about it, but for some of these veterans, if they're waiting on the VA, the same system that has put them at odds with their own health care, then what are they supposed to do?
They're supposed to rely on the President of the United States. Remember, there's a separation of powers here. There's the legislative branch, and if I could fire the VA folks, I promise you they would be fired and out of a job today. The problem is the current secretary, the acting secretary, just can't on the job on Friday. The other secretary was being lied to. Nobody was being held accountable.
I'm going to get caught up by a computer. I apologize. We can obviously have much more on this conversation. I hope you come back so we do, sir.
I hope we do.
Thank you very much. We'll be right back with more happening.
Thank Dad.